Welcome to TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, change-makers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled each week to bring you different thought leaders from around the world, and I could not be more excited about this week's guest and to bring him all to you, and that is the one, the only, George Couros. George, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody who you are if they don't already know you.
Well, before I get into that, I just want to say thanks because I know you have made such an impact on education. And one of the things I really appreciate about you, Todd, is that I see you just lifting, everyone in TEPSA for sure, but also people around the world. So it is an honor. And I really appreciate your support of me. I've known you for such a long time.
Yeah.
And, seeing the great focus that you have on really lifting people up, building relationships with your community. And so I really appreciate that. And that's how we, I think we first connected, both you and I were principals at probably around the same time. And weirdly enough, like I never wanted to go into education. I was inspired by the movie Billy Madison. I'm like, that's what I want to do. So I'm actually a trained kindergarten teacher because I wish I was kidding. It was actually the movie that I'm like, that looks fun. So I wanted to work elementary, and that is where my heart is. But I was principal for a while, and then I trained principals in my district. And weirdly enough, someone kind of coaxed me into sharing some of the stuff we were doing on social media. And I remember distinctly someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, we would love for you to come talk about what you're doing in your school." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, yeah, you should come speak. And I said, "I guess." And they said, "Okay, well, what's your fee?" I'm like, "You're going to pay me to do this?" And I had no clue. So yeah, it's been a really great opportunity for me that I accidentally fell into. And like I love what I do, but if I give you like a close second, it'd be being a principal. Is honestly my favorite job. And growing up in a restaurant as a kid, I felt like I was like my parents, in that restaurant, how I looked at community and bringing people together. But even though I accidentally fell into what I do today, my focus is really how do we intentionally open those doors for kids and help them open them themselves. And so that has really kind of been my focus in the work that I've been doing over the years.
There are so many layers to that answer that I was like, okay, well, which one do I want to dive into first? But okay, so I've got to ask this. When we do these conversations here, I kind of love hearing a little bit of the journey first before, and I know you've shared pieces of it, but I know, you get into education, you fall in love with it, and then at some point during your path, you're like, school leadership might be next for me. For you personally, was that a decision where you were there and like, I think this is the next step that I want to pursue? Or did you have somebody who was like, "No, George, I think you need to go do this," and then that was the first time it entered your head?
Nobody was asking me to do it. And I wish I was like telling you that, because I actually, and it's funny because I didn't really have aspirations to go into administration. That was never a focus area for me. It's really funny. I applied, I really wanted to go into like tech leadership, ed tech, and not because that's my background, but because I had a familiarity with it and I knew that was something I was really passionate about. But there is an assistant principal position open up in July. And it's funny because if a job is opening in July in administration, something went wrong, right? Something happened there that it's open. So I just said, you know what? I want people to know I'm interested in some type of leadership. So I just I'm going to throw my name there and we'll see what happens. And I got an interview, and I think it's because no one was looking. That's part of it. And so I was kind of shocked that I got the interview. And then I had the interview with a principal who was also just hired probably about 2 weeks prior. So it tells you something there as well.
Yep.
And I remember distinctly, and if you know anything about my personality, like I say what I think. And the principal and I in this interview start getting in a fight. We like literally are arguing, and it was getting pretty abrasive. And I remember calling my mentor, Kelly Wilkins, and I said, that was the worst interview I ever had. She goes, you know what? I know Archie. He's a little bit different. I don't think it's as bad as you think. She didn't know anything, but she knew Archie. So about 2-3 days later, I get the call like, hey, I'm thinking, hey, thanks for coming out. We offered to someone else. So he calls me and said, hey, I actually wanted you. I wanted to offer you the job. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, you are the only one who pushed back on anything I said. And that's what I'm looking for. And as a principal, I'm going to tell you this, at the end of the day, I make the decision. And because if something goes wrong, the superintendent's not calling you, they're calling me.
Yeah.
But I need you to be the person that challenges me before I say something to the staff or share something. But if I have to make a decision, you got to back me up as well. And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally, I love challenging you, right, too. And so that was kind of like, that was a really eye-opening thing for me, and it really changed my thinking. So a lot of times we'd have conversations, and I never let him go out there too. And I remember distinctly on my very first day as an assistant principal, I got in a fight with a teacher on the staff. I'm like, why? It's obviously me. I'm the issue, right? I'm fighting with everybody. And he said to me, he goes, I know her. She's got a great reputation. Just let it go, right? And so we got to a point, and what's amazing is that 2 years later, who do I hire when I become a principal? That teacher, because she was doing the same thing. We both had, goals of where we wanted to go that were very similar, but we had different approaches, and she appealed to people, I didn't. And so that was I think that was part of the way that I look at leadership, is really, there is going to be conflict. There's going to be some of that contentiousness, but are we focusing on the same goal? And really, how do we learn from the people that challenge us? Because you're not learning from the people that say nothing. And so that's really kind of how I fell into it. It was totally accidental, but I never wanted to be a principal. And on my first day as AP, I was like, I want to be a principal. Like, I'm ready for this. And he knew that. And my, Archie Lilico, I give a great deal of respect to him, because his focus as a principal was not to have a lifelong AP. It was like to develop more principals. And so that was really beneficial to me.
Well, I think you've got such good advice there that I hope people heard, and that is, you want those people around you who will push back, who will question, who will really challenge your thinking. But at the end of the day, know that in the end, you've got to make the choice. So I've got to fall in line with whatever choice you make, but that doesn't mean I can't question or challenge you in a respectful way, but in a way that knows that that's my job. And so I love that that's the advice, because thinking about the best leaders that I've worked under or that I've tried to emulate, those are the kind of skill sets, because they make everyone around you better.
Yeah, and that the thing is that when he would do that, and I did the exact same thing. He would sometimes, it would not be 100% of what his decision was. It would morph a little bit based on the feedback, and that was because we were always focused on this, and that's really what I'm passionate about, is really trying to find the best way. But you don't find it when you're not open to the pushback and to the challenge. But you have to create a space, and that was something he did very well. He created a space where he's like, don't push back behind my back, like do it here. And because I need that, I want to get better. So it was really beneficial, and has shaped a lot of my thinking today, for sure.
I love that. Okay, so thinking through this, I'm always thinking of the other perspective too. What if I'm an assistant principal right now, and I've got a leader who they don't want the pushback. Right? It does not go well. They're just looking for a yes man, yes woman, whatever. But I know that I want to be in an environment that challenges that. What can I do as an assistant principal if my leadership isn't of that mindset?
Yeah, and I think years ago I made this image as hey, the goal of what we're trying to do is to do what's best for kids. That is your centering question, right? So the reason I say this, and this is actually sometimes I get in contentious arguments with parents, debates and stuff like that, and I would stop and say hey, you and I are doing what's best for your child, correct? And I would form it in a question, and it was let's just stop for a second, make sure we're on the same page. Because I'm actually trying to help you what I'm doing right now, because you and I actually have the same goal. And I think sometimes when you're that's not just AP to principal, but sometimes teachers say my principal won't let me do any of this. So I'll say, hey, what I would do is hey, you and I are here to do what's best for kids, correct? And it's like that centering question. And now it's the onus is on me to say like, hey, I want to try this thing, or, here's something that I'm really thinking about. And here's why I really think this would be beneficial to our students and beneficial to our community. And then work backwards from there, because that's where you get on the same page. Because, I've also seen, being comfortable with technology, my staff would go to some conference and they would see some tech that was like so cool at the conference that, and they say, we want this right now. And then we would like do all this work to get installed, et cetera. And then they would never use it. Right. So it was like, hey, like if you want this, you got to tell me how this is going to benefit kids. You can't just say it's cool. And you can't say I saw it at a conference. You got to go through some of that research. So it's not a manipulation to like get that person there, but there's a little bit of an onus. Like I have to actually really be thoughtful to how this actually benefits kids, and then try to get them to understand that through that process. And so I think it really, a lot of times, just having that centering question was really helpful through, whether it's, families that you're working with, or, a leader above you that maybe is resistant. And I don't think if you are in a situation where they say, no, I'm not here to do best for kids, then you might have to go. Like,
yeah. But I love that. But that is the way to frame it. It's not just to say it out there. It's to make sure that we're both owning it. And so I love that you frame it in that question, because then they have to say, well, yes, we are here. What's best? Or no, I'm not. So, there you go.
I'm out then. I gotta go.
That's right.
But I've never had that backfire on me.
Yeah.
Like, nope.
No.
So
Such good advice.
Yeah, that's the centering question.
Well, at some point you also decide to become an author, and not only an author, people, he's also a publisher, just so you know. But you write Innovator's Mindset. It takes off. It's such an exciting book. It's one that really resonates with people still to this day, even though it came out years ago, which led you to writing other books with other people. But you actually have a brand new book out, and I know it's out for everybody. I got to read it early, and George, I loved it.
Thank you.
Like, I like Innovator's Mindset. I think it's a great book. I think the other books you've read all have great pieces as well. But this is one of my favorites that you've released so far. And so I'd love to kind of tell us a little bit what Forward Together, your new book, is about, and kind of where it came from.
Well, and it's interesting, like how much first of all, thank you so much for your kind words about the book. And it is kind of interesting to hear you, because I know that you and I have been in the space for a long time, and there's no way that you would look back 10 years ago at your own career and do things exactly the same.
Right.
And that's part of the book, is like, hey, here's this thing where I was trying to get someone to like move ahead and just totally blew it. Right. And I think that's probably why it resonated, because you're trying to get people to go like, have I ever done that? Like, have I ever been that? So it is meant to be, a lot of sharing some stuff that schools are doing really well, but also some of the things I messed up and how I kind of figured out that pathway. But Forward Together, moving schools from conflict to community in contentious times, which, I don't think there's any contentiousness in education anywhere.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Just for the very niche places that actually does exist. You see all of these arguments, all this pushback, all this challenge, and people are very, very frustrated. And I think we've become so focused on the problem that we are not necessarily looking for solutions. And we are so divisive. We kind of pick teams like it's a sport almost, where I was actually sitting in the gym, and somebody tagged me on a tweet. I don't know if that's what we call them anymore, or an X, whatever.
It's called.
Yeah. And they showed me like a group of kids working on a model for the next year, and then their superintendent comes in, and then the kids say like, hey, we can't do this on our own. We have to bring in the community, because we want your words, all throughout. And I'm like, I have an idea for a book. And I was like, the solution was there, and the solution was being done by schools. So it's really kind of focused on like, what are the principles that we need to hold on to that really matter, especially when they are hardest to do. And even though those 6 principles I think are really important and very foundational, they don't work 100% of the time, because as much as I try to show them as they can be a constant, the variable is always humans, right? Things don't always work the way we want them to work. And so the second part is really the perspectives. Like, how do we, when things don't go the way we want them to do, how do we like take a step back so that we can move forward and focus on that? And it was honestly, this book did not exist in my mind until I saw that tweet. And then I was done it 2 weeks later. Like I was done the first draft, and it was like just kind of going through that. And a lot of it is honestly, as I shared, it's pointing at some of the things I screwed up. And it's meant to be, and it's the number one comment on it, which is kind of funny because it's like, wow, this is like a very serious topic, is that the book is hilarious. Like that is like, it's actually pretty light in that. And there's, I poke a lot of jokes just to, ease attention, and maybe that's the way I deal with stuff. But I think it is, I do really believe in that concept that, we really need to bring our communities in the fold and not just engage them, but really empower them where they become your advocates, not your adversaries through that process.
Well, I think the reason I love it so much is because it is so timely. There is so much going on, and I love that you also share, like, this is not the silver bullet to end all problems. And sometimes I think we get in this mindset of, I need to find the resource or the person or the book that's going to fix it all for me. Like, just give me the steps. And it's exactly like what you said. We're working with people. Like, there is no dead set rules that if you follow these 5 steps, you will always have it work out. But at the same time, we need a foundation. Like, we need a place to pull from. And I think that this is a great resource for that.
Yeah, and there's one of the things that's really sticking out to people is what I call the teacher paradox. And it's something I talk about a lot when I speak with groups, is that I am judged when I'm speaking. Do I give you a bunch of ideas you can do the next day in your classroom, right? And I often say, do you know any other group of people who want to be told exactly what to do the next day, who also hate being told what to do other than teachers, right? It's like, tell me exactly what to do, but don't you dare tell me what to do. And so my job is not to tell people what to do. It's just to share some ideas with them, but they got to figure out their own pathway, because I don't know your community. And we always talk about, hey, relationships are so crucial to what we do, but I don't have those relationships with your community. I don't know the people you serve, and I don't know your context. So that's why it's like, hey, here's some like broad ideas, but you got to make them your own. And that's something that, that's true of Innovators Mindset, as this book, just sharing some ideas, but ultimately you and your community figure out those solutions together.
Okay, well, George, I could literally sit here for like the next hour and a half and ask questions and learn from you, just with your own experiences and your mindset and things. But obviously, this is a podcast. We got to keep it going. So I want to wrap up this conversation, but I want to do it the same way I do with every other guest, and that is, anytime we have an opportunity to speak to people or share some of our hearts or our beliefs or anything like that, we always want to make sure that people walk away with at least one thing that we wanted them to hear. So for the people today who are listening or watching this episode, if there's only one thing they walk away with, what is your one thing for them?
I think when it's really, this has been a big thing for me, and I've really tried to work on this myself, is that when you are dealing with someone and you're frustrated with their lack of progress, that they are not where you want them to be, understand that you weren't there at one point as well, right? There's things you and I do, Todd, that we swore we never do, right? And it's now just because of who we are and what got us there. But I also think that the most underrated leadership skill is just listening and not trying to convince people, but hearing where they are and trying to figure out those pathways. Because, when you're pushing people and convincing them, often you're just kind of you're not trying to hear where they are and what they need and what best. And I think when you kind of work backwards from there, and I've always said this, that it's not about getting people all at the same place. It's how do you move people from their point A to their point B, but you got to understand their point A. You got to understand where they're at and move backwards from there. So I think really kind of being empathetic, starting from that place, will make your life, it might take a little bit longer, but it's going to be way easier if you just listen. I think it is the most important leadership skill that we need to have.
Goodness, there are so many good points in here. I hope all of you go back and listen to this again. George, if people are like, okay, I'm hooked, like I got to learn more about George, or I want to bring him to work with us, or I want to get more resources from him, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, GeorgeCouros.com is the best place. And if you just Google me, you'll find it right away. And interestingly enough, kind of like you, that space was never meant to be a space where I share my ideas. It was a space I created to figure out, how do kids do this? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So how can I teach them? So it is kind of cool how that's evolved. And like I said earlier, that space has opened up doors to me that I didn't even know existed. And my work, and I think the work of everyone, is to, help kids find those doors and walk through them themselves. So it's been a blessing to, I would have never, if I had never started that as a principal, I would have never met people like you, and, been blessed to have these connections.
Well, I hope everybody goes and checks out georgecouros.com. Go check out his brand new book, Forward Together. And if you're looking for a fantastic speaker and somebody to encourage and challenge, bring George in with your group. Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of the TEPSA Talk podcast. Remember to go on and like, subscribe, leave us a review. All of that helps get this out to a bigger audience. And we hope to see all of you real soon at the 2026 TEPSA Summer Conference. You will not want to miss it. Registration is open now.
Thank you.